Greetings! If you're watching this, it can only mean that you've registered for a history class at Tarrant County College. My name is Dr. Ryan Pettengill, or as you'll know me in due time, Dr. P, and I'll be your professor for this semester. The purpose that I have here with this video is to acquaint you with the guidelines, expectations, and requirements for this class. And to that end, I'm going to be going through the syllabus. So what you're going to want to do, even if it means that you need to put me on pause for a second, is go access the syllabus. Now, if you've not logged into Canvas, you're going to want to do that through Canvas. You're going to want to log in and then click on Our Class, History 1301. And then what I'd like you to look for is the tab on the far left side. It's the third one from the top. Click the Syllabus tab, and what will pop up at you is our course syllabus. Do that now, and meet me back here when you've got it in front of you. Okay, so first things first, I'd like to introduce myself to you, and the reason for this is in a discipline like history, I really do think that it's important for you to understand exactly who it is that you're getting this information from. If you understand how I was trained and even where I was trained, I think it'll make a lot more sense as to how and why I approach the class in the manner in which I do. So my academic training was as a labor historian, right? And in 2009, I wrote a dissertation at Michigan State University, and the topic had everything to do with labor and working class history. Now, it was more modern American history than it was anything else, but I very much enjoyed teaching early American history and the issues and events that we're going to be going through in the next several weeks. And so I've been teaching this class for well over 10 years right now, and as I said before, I really get a lot out of it. And I think that you will get a lot out of this as well. So if you're wondering how and why you get hit over the head week in and week out with the rise of industry in the United States, or indentured servitude, or most importantly of all, chattel slavery, right? Issues that loosely involve labor and working class history, it's because academics tend to emphasize what our research is grounded in, and my research is grounded in labor and working class history. So I hope that makes a little bit of sense and gives you some perspective as to how and why I approach the class the way that I do. Now, let's get back to the logistics, because in a class like this, communication is going to be absolutely key. And the best way to get a hold of me and communicate would be to email me at that address that you see at the top of the syllabus there. I check that regularly, and if you get me that message before 3 o'clock, Monday through Thursday, there's a good chance that I'll respond on the same day. If it's after 3 or if it's on the weekends, it's going to be a little bit slower, but I take a lot of pride on answering questions in a timely fashion, okay? You can also see that I've listed the office phone. If you call that number, they would be able to get a hold of me if you need to speak to me directly. And in the case of extreme instances, and we are talking about I've exhausted every other option when it comes to getting a hold of you and I can't, I've listed my cell phone number. Please use that sparingly and responsibly, but it's there for your use if you absolutely need it, okay? So as you can see, there are numerous different options of getting a hold of me. To be really clear here, this class is entirely online. It is asynchronous, meaning that if you wanted to work ahead of time, you wanted to watch a bunch of lectures this weekend and, kind of get out in front of the class, that's entirely fine, right? You can do that. For the most part, you can complete assignments, most assignments anyway, ahead of time. There's only really two things that you can't do, which would be the midterm exam as well as the final exam. But those will become available, as you're going to see here in a minute, as their due dates begin to approach, okay? Now, I referenced this just a second ago, but I want to emphasize it again. What we're doing in this class would be the early half of the U.S. History Survey, okay? So if you're looking for a time period, I'm going to give you a range here, and we'll begin our conversation in the pre-European contact era, okay? We'll begin with the history of the Western Hemisphere before there are Europeans in it, okay? Now, that date's going to be a little bit vague. You'll see why once you watch that first video lecture, but I can give you a hard date with respect to when the class will end, and that will be 1877. And you'll see why once we get to the end of this class. We will emphasize all the usual suspects in this class. We will talk about leaders and presidents and senators and things of that variety. We'll also talk about the Revolutionary War, the Civil War. We'll talk about the rise of industry. We'll talk about changing cultures, but we'll also talk about individuals that don't always make their way into history textbooks. As I said before, I was trained as a labor historian, which is essentially a social historian. And the people that I really care about with respect to the story that I tell, those tend to be people of the common, average variety. Let me give you a couple quick examples, okay? One individual that I believe does not get enough credit whatsoever would be a woman from Massachusetts, or what would become Massachusetts, named Anne Hutchinson, okay? And Anne Hutchinson is going to get in trouble in the colonial era for conducting what is essentially is going to be Bible study. And the reason that she's going to get in trouble is because she is a woman, and this is a time period where women were not necessarily supposed to do things like that. And when the governor of the colony said, "You better stop that," she said, "Listen, I don't answer to you, I answer to a higher power. And for all intents and purposes, all souls are created equal. Okay? My soul is equal to your soul, is equal to his soul, is equal to her soul, right? God creates all souls equal." That's what Anne Hutchinson said. And so this is an early notion of equality, as you and I, as Americans, understand equality. And you don't always hear about people like Anne Hutchinson, and this is some of the things that we'll be emphasizing throughout the course of the next several weeks. So hope that gives you a pretty good perspective of what we'll be doing in here. Let's talk about the text, okay? The text that is required is available there at the bookstore. It's listed under required text in the syllabus. If you go there and you tell them what class that you're in and that you're one of my students, they will be able to point you to the appropriate textbook, okay? Now, there are some other books, not books, but more like readings that I've already uploaded in the Canvas system, and you have access to them as we speak. I'll point you in the right direction as far as how you go about accessing them here in a second, but for right now, those are the required materials. If you scroll down, I'm going to leave a lot of this reading up to you, but if you scroll down to where it says Course Outline, you will see not only what topics we will be covering on a week-to-week basis, but what assignments that you need to complete, okay? Now, to be very clear here, I'll be going through the assignments and what you can expect in a few seconds, but for right now, take a quick look at week 1. You can see what online readings you need to read, what video lectures you need to watch, what readings you need to start reading and when you need them done by, including any and all quizzes, discussion forums, and of course this won't be for week 1, but when and if you have an exam or another major assignment. So this course outline really needs to be your Bible for the next few weeks because it's going to point out important dates and deadlines. So you need to refer to it frequently. I would say that you need to check in and take a look at the course outline at least once per week. Let's talk about evaluation procedures. Scroll down to the end of the course outline and you will see a part that says evaluation procedures. It will begin with a number 1, and after the 1 it says participation. Participation is going to count for 15% of this overall score in your class, okay? Each week, you are going to be asked to chime in on what I call a discussion forum. Now, if you wanted to take a look at the discussion forum right now, click discussions. It's there on the left. It's underneath the syllabus in Canvas. And you can see that I have preloaded all of the discussion forums that we'll be going through this semester. Sometimes it has a document that is embedded in it. Sometimes that's a link. And sometimes it asks you to refer to your online readings. Sometimes it doesn't give you a choice and it specifies which document in your online readings that you need to check out. And other times it leaves it up to you. It'll say use at least 2 of any of the documents in chapter 5. I'm just picking a chapter at random, and use them to answer this open-ended question. Now, with respect to the discussion forums, it's not as if I grade those like I'm grading an exam. Basically, what I'm asking you to do is participate in a group conversation, okay? To that end, if you want to engage the thoughts and opinions of your classmates, of course, I expect this to be done in a very respectful manner, but nonetheless, you're able to do that, and I highly encourage you to do that. But nonetheless, every time on the course calendar that you see that you have a discussion forum that is due by the end of the week, right? That means that you need to check in and you need to participate in that discussion forum. Now, let me be really clear in terms of deadlines. Most, not all, but most of our discussion forums will be due on a Friday. And by Friday, I mean Friday evening at 11:59 p.m. So I'm going to give you the whole day to get to that assignment, okay? 11:59 p.m. allows working people to get home, get settled, eat dinner, put your kids to bed, etc., and have still plenty of time to complete an assignment like this, okay? So here's the thing about the participation discussion forums. This is a relatively easy way to rack up some good points, okay? And there really isn't any excuse not to rack them up, primarily because all I'm really asking you to do is the most basic level of work here. Another very easy way to rack up some points would be to take care of the quizzes. Not every week, but many of these weeks, you're going to see at least one quiz, okay? Now, the quizzes are essentially open note and open book. They're not timed. The point is not to see if you can guess right. The point is to see if you can critically read and analyze a document and then use that document to answer the open-ended question. You're going to see a total of 6 quizzes throughout the course of this semester. You're only responsible for 5, okay? Now, what that means is if you miss one, you totally forgot about it, you still can score a perfect 15 out of 15 for this part of the class. Now, if you do all 6 and you do them all very well, what will happen is you can earn up to 3 points of extra credit. Each one of these quizzes is worth 3 points. And so, although it's only out of 15, you can essentially score an 18 out of 15. And again, you can see that this is not a difficult task and it's pretty easy to rack up some points. Now, I will be honest, what's coming next is going to be more difficult and heavier lifting. Paper 1 and Paper 2 are essentially going to be essay questions. I'm going to ask you to write a 2 to 3 page paper on based off of not only your course readings, but also a supplemental reading, be that Frederick Douglass or be that Sam Patch. You're going to need to use those resources as a jumping off point to answer an open-ended question. We'll talk a little bit more about what to expect with the papers as their due dates approach. But both Paper 1 and Paper 2 are worth 10 percentage points each for a grand total of 20 percentage points, okay? Now, if you miss a quiz, if it's 12:01, the morning after the quiz is due, then that quiz disappears and it counts as a 0. The papers are different. If you're late on a paper, I will still accept it, but of course it has a penalty that comes along with it. So the bottom line is pay attention to due dates, and if you know that the due date for one assignment or another is going to be an issue, get a hold of me and we can see what we can do, okay? Now, we've talked about both the papers as well as the quizzes. The last thing I want to emphasize here would be the exams. You're going to have one midterm exam and you're going to have one final exam. Both sets of exams will include multiple choice questions, short written essay questions, and one long essay question per exam. Each exam is worth a total of 25 points individually, and collectively the midterm and final are worth 50 percentage points of your final grade. That is the class in a nutshell. It's a 100-point scale, and if you scroll down past where it says final exam, right, you will see my grading scale. Let me say this with respect to how rigid that scale is. If I have someone that's got an 89.95782, of course I usually round up, okay? But I don't want you to have this assumption that close enough is good enough with respect to, an 87 translates into an A, right? Generally speaking, that's not going to be the case. Now, I do want you to take a look at some of these other guidelines and policies, including late work, the withdrawal policy, consequences for withdrawing, things of that variety. But there's one last thing that I want to emphasize before I let you get at this, and that would be academic honesty, or maybe more appropriately put, academic dishonesty. Plagiarism is a very serious offense, and students that engage in plagiarism, especially the premeditated form of plagiarism, as I like to think of it, there's going to be severe consequences. At the least, you will fail the assignment, and at worst, you may fail the entire course. The bottom line is, don't do it. It's not worth your time, and it's absolutely not worth my time. So, with all that being said, what I'd like to do is to turn things over to you at this point. I hope that you're ready to hit the ground running with me. I'm certainly excited to be working with you. And if there's anything that I can do to make this experience better, please do not hesitate to let me know.